Hey there, it's Seb Frey here with another exciting episode of Seb Frey TV, and today I want to talk about one of those activities which realtors spend a lot of time doing and a lot of time talking about, and that is comparative market analysis. Have you heard about that? Okay, so you know what an appraisal is, obviously. It's when a licensed appraiser, somebody who has a license from the state, comes out, looks at your house, measures it, and creates a very lengthy report saying how much your home is worth, right? Everybody knows about appraisals, right? So a comparative market analysis, sometimes they call it a BPO, a broker price opinion, is kind of like an appraisal, but nowhere near as detailed. But when you get an appraisal report, you'll see that there's actually three ways the appraiser looks at valuing the property. One is the cost comparison approach. One is the replacement cost approach, and one is the income method, like how much money does the property generate in terms of income, and how does that equal to its value. And it's interesting when you look at an appraisal report, usually those numbers are all pretty close by, right? So like the sales comparison, by comparing the recent sales of other properties, of other similar properties in the neighborhood, and then the cost approach, like how much would it cost to rebuild the property, and then subtracting out whatever depreciation, and then the income approach, how much income could the property generate. All three of those numbers are usually very closely correlated, but the residential appraisers, they use the sales comparison approach. They compare other homes which recently sold to the subject property, that's your house that you want to know how much it's worth, to figure out how much it's worth. And so when a realtor does a BPO, a broker price opinion, or a CMA, a comparative market analysis, what they're doing is they're looking at recent comparable sales and currently listed comparable homes to figure out the likely selling price of your property. So that's great. It's a time-tested way of figuring out, how much a property is going to sell for. But people get into a lot of trouble when they're doing these CMAs, especially people who don't really do very many of them. And that is that they pick the wrong comps, right? So like picking comps is like definitely an art and a science as well. So I'm just going to give you a few pointers here to like picking the right comps so you know how much your home is going to sell for. So for one, you must find comps that are very, very close in terms of bedroom, bathroom, lot size, square footage, age, and condition. And it's very hard to do in many neighborhoods, like especially all throughout Santa Cruz County pretty much, because there are very few homes which are exactly alike, and a lot of homes which are not very alike at all, right? They could be much bigger, much smaller, much older, much newer. They could be old but completely rehabbed. They could be on a big lot with a view, or a big lot with no view and no utility. I mean, like there's many different factors. So in order to have it be a good set of comps, you really have to find the ones that are most comparable. Now, one big thing that people mess up with is that they will cross neighborhood boundaries, right? So like a neighborhood boundary could be like an arterial road, it could be a freeway, it could be a shopping center, it could be a river, right? So there's many sort of like natural boundaries that tend to like define neighborhoods. And many times people will cross those boundaries in search of comps, and they'll say like, well, right across the river, there's a house. I mean, it's only a half a mile away or a quarter mile away. It's the exact same house, only it's on the other side of the river. Well, it could be that homes on the other side of the river are 50% more expensive or less expensive than the property that you want to evaluate. Another place where people get into problems is they look at homes in other school districts, right? So like very high performing or very low performing school districts will have a very big effect on the value of your property. And it's important to know because even within the same neighborhood, there is a boundary line between the school districts, or between which particular school within a district that house sort of feeds into. So if you don't pay attention to those, you can very frequently get a wrong idea about how much the actual property is worth. And another big thing people do is they look at outliers, right? They look at one house which sold like really, really high, or they look at one house which sold really, really low, and they're sort of like well outside the range of what most houses are going for. So when you see that happening, one of two things happened. Either A, somebody really overpriced a property, or B, there is some really killer thing about that property which isn't really apparent just from looking at it on the MLS or on Zillow or Redfin or wherever you happen to be looking at properties. So my advice is that when you're looking at a comparative market analysis to try and figure out what your home is worth, you really want to toss out those outliers because they're really more noise than they are important information that's going to help you figure out how much your home is worth. So if you do want to know how much your home is worth, please feel free to ask me. The best way always is for me to come through your property and check it out in person, because you can never really get the full picture of a property without walking through it. I've done thousands, literally thousands of these price analyses, and I feel I have a pretty good idea about what consumers are going to find valuable in your home and the price they would pay for it. All right, that is it for this episode of Seb Frey TV. Thank you so much. I know you have lots of friends, families, and coworkers who are wondering, hey, what's a good way to figure out how much your home is worth? Well, number one way is call me. Number two way is watch this video. So please go ahead and share this with all your friends, families, coworkers, colleagues, and everybody else. I would really appreciate it if you would give me the like, give me the thumbs up, share it, put a little heart by it. I don't know, whatever you're going to do. All right, that is it for this episode of Seb Frey TV. Thank you so much for watching. I will have another episode up for you before too long.